All right. With that, I'd like to open up the Orange County IDA meeting on Wednesday, April 20th, approximately 5:57 p.m. And call the meeting to order. We don't need to do the pledge. We already did that. Go ahead, Joe. Roll call.
Tambury, I'm sorry, Torelli,
Correct. Here. Present.
Tambury,
Present.
Odoc,
Present.
Walski,
Present.
Spencer,
Present.
Kennedy,
Present.
Rinaldi.
Present.
7 board members present.
Great.
Staff, myself and staff. And we have consultants. We have our general counsel, Susan Katzoff, bond counsel, Russ Genzel, our financial consultant, Shannon Manisi, and RJ Martucci again, joining us as our, from JGS, our auditor.
Great.
And again, legislator James O'Donnell is joining us.
Next agenda item, minutes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just proof of notice quickly. It's also included in your packet on March 31st. We noticed this meeting, so you'll see proof of that, a copy of that in your packet.
Thank you. Approval of minutes. We have presented the minutes from the March 16th meeting. Any questions, concerns, changes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
There was a discussion I had about the ascension of the board executive. Council correct showed me what was happening, but I don't see where that was mentioned.
Can you elaborate a little bit
It
further?
was, yeah,
Is our assistant secretary, Dr. Odak, moving up to secretary?
right, and so council showed me where it was in the minutes, but I don't see that transition in the discussion. So is that necessary for the minutes?
So did you follow that?
I did not. I know that during the meeting or at the end of last meeting, the question was raised about whether we needed an assistant secretary, given that Dr. Odak is the secretary. And the answer was, no, you do not. Your bylaws do not require you to have an assistant secretary. So your current officer slate does not include an assistant secretary, but it is neither required under the general municipal law, nor is it required by your bylaws. Was that the answer? Was that the question?
That's 85% of the answer. So I was just saying, I asked the question at the last meeting, and it wasn't in the minutes here. Your explanation, Sue, was at our training meeting. So I couldn't say, that was at the training meeting outside of this meeting.
I understand.
So all I'm, I asked it if.
Let's amend it. Well, let's amend the minutes to reflect the question that Noel asked. I don't know which time frame it is, but
I don't either. We'll
Just put it in.
yeah, just put it in there that Noel asked about the position of assistant secretary. And then in this meeting's minutes, it should be reflected that that meeting was answered both at the committee, at the board training, but also answered here.
Okay.
Okay.
And what Sue explained, because of our, what's it called, bylaws.
Bylaws.
Yeah, the bylaws didn't specify that there should be an assistant secretary. So that would correct previous year's administration that kept that position going. Because if you look at previous year's minutes, letterheads, things, it said there was an assistant secretary, but Sue explained that the bylaws doesn't articulate that or require that. So I was just asking that we have that transition, that people can see that we addressed it and corrected it.
So
We'll find that.
can we put a motion to amend the minutes to state that there was a conversation that our bylaws don't require us to have an assistant secretary?
Yeah, I think that's what we just asked. We just said, let's put that in, and we'll determine exactly when that was asked. So it's in the correct order on the minutes. And we'll ask for, if there's not any further comment, we'll ask for an approval with that amendment to approve the minutes.
Can we just ask council, do we need a motion to suggest any changes or request any changes, or we make the changes and then they're presented again, at which time we'll have a motion to approve?
I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes as amended by this discussion, unless there's other comments that we haven't heard. But assuming there are no other comments or questions, I would simply ask that a motion be made to adopt the minutes as amended, or with the amendment that Noel requested, and then just vote on that motion.
Okay, thank you.
Comment? Concern? With that, I'll accept any motion to accept it as amended. So moved. Thank you. Second? Second. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? Okay. Rejection? Okay, pass unanimously. All right. That's the minutes. As we previously discussed, the next agenda item is about committee meetings. We held one committee meeting since we last met. That was the audit committee. It occurred prior to the OCFC meeting and prior to this meeting today. With that, I'll turn it over to staff and then to consulting staff to present the audit as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, we're going to cover a couple of things now, talking about our 2021 audit. We'll give it to, actually, let's start with that, if that's okay with you.
2021,
Yeah.
2020 audit,
2021 audit.
2021 audit. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we're in 22, right? I know it's.
And at their audit meeting, it was unanimously moved forward to bring to the full board the audit as presented. At the OCFC meeting, it was presented and a 6 approvals of 6, 1 abstention. It was approved at the OCFC meeting. So go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to turn it over to RJ Martucci from JGS just to give us the remainder of the audit presentation as it pertains to OCIDA.
Thank you, Bill. So as previously discussed in the OCFC meeting, that information within the confines of those standalone financials do find them that their way into these IDA financials. So if you open up, there's a statement of net position, revenues and expenses and changes in net position, which is the equivalent of a profit and loss or an income statement, and a statement of cash flows. You'll see a primary government column. That is what we refer to as the IDA, which accumulates the accelerator activity within that column. So you'll have IDA and accelerator activity reported in that column. The component unit is the funding corporation. So all the information in the standalone financials falls into that column. We present a combined total and we compare it to the prior year's combined total. So yet again, I'm happy to report that we have a clean opinion. There were no issues working with management. It's been a great opportunity to work with Bill and Kelly and the rest of the staff. The one thing I will point out is we do a separate examination of the investments with regard to their compliance with the public law. So we look to ensure that they're fully collateralized, they're invested in approved vehicles. There is RFP processes to ensure that we are going after or pursuing investments with the vehicles that are going to be or generate the highest yield or rate of return for our funds, because they are in effect municipal funds, and you know, we are fiduciaries of those funds, so we have to ensure we take care of them. The one thing I would like to note based on the prior meeting is the management is working with their financial consultants to really track the investment process to ensure that as CDs mature, they are RFP'd and, you know, invested or reinvested with a great interest rate. So it's great to see that, because that's certainly a focus with the cash balance or the net position of the organizations. There's a lot of capital that can be employed to generate revenues via interest income while they're sitting on the sidelines in effect. So I just wanted to, you know, agree with the sentiment of, you know, ensuring we look at those avenues, because it's a, you know, we do have a lot of capital, and it's a great way to at least generate additional resources to ultimately put behind projects and other, you know, designated items that really carry on the mission and the purpose of the organization. So with that, it was my pleasure again to serve as the financial statement auditors for the IDA and the OCFC. So I thank you for that. And any questions I can answer at this time.
So board members, any questions in regards to the audit as presented? With that, without any questions, I'll entertain a motion to accept the audit as presented. This is for the entire audit package for not only the component, but also the entire IDA portion of it. So the entire package in 2 forms. I'll make a motion. Thank you, Dean. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Roll call, Bill?
Charlie,
Yes.
Jamboree,
Yes.
Walsky,
Yes,
Spencer,
Abstain.
Kennedy,
Yes.
Rinaldi,
Yes.
Huda.
Yes.
6 ayes, 1 abstention.
Great, thank you. RJ, thank you once again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for you and your team, and we look forward to potentially working with you in the future.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
I'll get you that stuff tonight.
Thanks very
We're
much.
having a wonderful evening. Thank you.
All right, next agenda item, finance. We'll go right into our financial reports with staff and with consultant.
I'm going to turn it over to Shannon McNeese from RBT to talk about the March financials.
Okay, so for the month of March for IDA and Accelerator, there was $2,500 in application fees, and that's related to Crossroads. Their subtenant rents were $5,101. I just want to note that there are staggering exits on the rents, so you will see from month to month going forward that it may drop at certain points as those staggering exits occur. But overall, you should be in line with the budgeted amount that's presented here. But when you're looking at the 3 months in comparison to the current year or the current month, you'll see a slight variance. And it's just because I believe New Windsor dropped off. So overall, with the interest earnings for the month, you had $7,863 of income. Your quarter to date, which is your year to date, is $58,369. So again, depending on when those bigger projects come in, you will see a bigger jump, hopefully to be more in line with what's projected in the budget. If we start to look at the expenses, I'd like to point out, this is going to go back to the previous conversation under OCFC regarding the reclassification of expenses for 2022 into the proper categories. Like was pointed out, there's no benefits. A lot of items are being grouped together under one line item, and they really should be broken out. We noticed that salaries are including any employee reimbursements in other things, which I don't think is transparent enough. So we would like to make those changes. We're going to go back and look at all the bills starting from January and make those reclasses so that everything is properly displayed for everybody and more in line with what's presented for the budget purpose. And an example of that would be bank service charges. Those are actually late fees. They're not bank service charges. And there are more that are buried in the individual expense line items. So we're going to break them out so that the board can get a real idea of how much is being incurred for late fees, because that is severely understated the way it's presented right now. But with that in line, salaries for the month of March were $18,759. So overall, you're in line with your 3 months for the quarter there, $55,842. Your payroll taxes and fees, and by fees they mean the fees that are paid to your payroll provider. And I think we should break those out as well, because they're not really payroll taxes and they're not related. So when you're trying to get your true cost of just your employees, you'll be able to see how much it's costing to utilize the service versus how much your employee and payroll tax costs are. The fiscal audit line there is actually the labor audits. So you can see the amount there, the 9,480 will be moved down to the proper line under projects and programs, because there is a specific line there for the local labor auditing fees, and that's where that's going to be presented next month. So you'll see that whole line will no longer be there. You will see JGS's fee is actually what that line item is meant. That's meant for their audit. The CFO bookkeeping services would be RBT's fees. You had professional fees of $600 and office supplies and postage of $1,052. And in there includes the monthly lease expenses for equipment. So overall, your admin costs for the month were $38,397, with quarter to date $100,536. So you should be in line from a quarter perspective for your annual budgeted amount there for 464, especially since we'll be moving some items down. So you might actually be ahead from a cost perspective. And then the project programs category will have some expenses next month, but currently there are none sitting there for this month. And then we will jump down to the building expenses. So rent of $15,820. So right in line with where you should be. Overall for the quarter to date, $40,039. Utilities of $2,981. And your quarter to date would be the $8,442. Again, you're right in line with everything that's been occurring. Maintenance, you have $2,346, which is mostly your cleaning service and some other little items, but your quarter to date is $7,340. So out of your budgeted amount of $102,000, I think you'll be way under budget, but Bill could speak to if there were other items that may have been in that category. Otherwise, you will be under budget. And then internet and telephone was $1,591,000. So quarter to date, you're $11,056. I know there was some fees for fiber optics and some other things and getting things up to code to where you needed to be. So your total building expenses for March were $22,737. And quarter to date is $66,990. So you are still well below where you would be for budgeted purposes for the year if you don't have any surprise expenses. So I think you guys are doing a really good job of maintaining your expenses. And the last there is the agency support expenses. So this also goes back to us reclassing some items out. $2,500 of what's presented in marketing and PR is actually IT support. That's for 88 Studio, and it's been previously coded to this marketing and PR. And then the remaining 1,000 is for Mid-Hudson News. So overall for the month of March, you have $64,633 in expenses. And because you only had $7,863 of income, you're showing a loss of $56,771. And quarter to date, you're at a loss of $135,914. But again, I think that's mostly attributable to timing of when projects are going to get started and those fees coming in. Any questions on this? I know it was a lot of information to throw out.
Is legal counsel going to send us a bill?
Yes, we actually got them that were approved last month. And that is one other, I'll say, thing that's missing from this report. I have a new version. I didn't want to get into what we had last month where we have our clean version and then you're looking at something else in your packet. So I have it that does include what was approved last month. So that's the only, I'm going to hand this out now that you mentioned it. No, I was going to wait and not complicate it. But since you mentioned, I'm going to hand this out after. You got it. I told you you would. So well done.
But you were prepared.
Yes. Just trying to keep it simple. That's all. It's really.
I'm just wanting to say, if you're regular, I'm happy with the actual information we're getting from them.
Thank you.
I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
And I think it'll more align once we have this whole thing meshed back together.
Absolutely.
It'll be quicker and easier.
Slowly getting a little bit more clarified, and I know it's a lot of process.
It'll get better more quickly too, as now that RBT is fully, handling it and they're reconciling everything. So I think it will. One other thing I just want to mention that we've talked about.
Yeah, I was just going to jump into that.
Go ahead, Shane, if you want.
So what we would like to do is, and we kind of talked about it in our first meeting, is we want to bring the budgets into QuickBooks because they're not in there. And when we do that, we would be able to export the reports directly from QuickBooks, and there wouldn't be any manual manipulation of numbers to put them in a spreadsheet. So you would be getting real-time data right from QuickBooks, as opposed to the way that it's currently being done, where it's being exported, it's put it into an Excel, lines are combined and things of that nature. And that's part of what we were talking about and cleaning it up and getting everything aligned for next month. So we would represent March, but then you'd also have April as it stood at that point. And in that, we would like to talk about, and I don't know, Bill, if you guys talked about this in your previous meeting, about possibly combining Accelerator and IDA within QuickBooks instead of having two separate files. And until that's discussed, what we would do is we would present them separately from a financial statement perspective, but we would also do an Excel spreadsheet if you still wanted the numbers combined. Because technically they do have two separate budgets right now, but if we were to do all of that, we would bring everything into the IDA's file from a QuickBooks perspective and combine all the numbers and the activities so that you are getting that true picture of what they are combined as.
I'll just add that in QuickBooks, you can have multiple companies or entities, and we do. We have the Accelerator 3, the Accelerator, OCFC, and IDA. They kept Accelerator and IDA very separate to a degree for, I think, their benefits to what they were trying to do, also. But I think for the most part, there's been some lack of comfort from the board of seeing things being separate. So we've tried to move them together. However, in QuickBooks, again, they're two completely different entities. And QuickBooks does not have kind of a merging capability to it. So we would have to, Shannon saying, take one of them and take the financials from the accounting from the others and manually add them in so we have one company. That too is not within the scope of what RBT does. So if we're going to look for them to do that and clean that up, I've asked Shannon to come up with an estimate about that and we can approve that. The alternative to not do that is to keep everything separate and the Accelerator is its own entity reporting separately for that.
So for clarification, the Accelerator is not its own entity. Only in this,
No, only
in
QuickBooks.
this virtual
Yes, sir.
QuickBooks world it is, but it's not a standalone entity, nor is it a standalone business or a standalone
Correct.
charter or standalone bylaw. It's all part of. One of the ideas here is that as they do stuff, they'll present it to the finance committee, so the finance committee can hash some stuff out, make some recommendations to the board. The idea, I think, the dart on the wall is before the April meeting, we'll have a finance committee, and that this stuff will be brought to that with the assistance of staff and with the consulting staff, so that some of this can be ironed out. So that when it comes to the board, it's more in a presentation format instead of a discussion format, so they can go a little easier. I think we have a little more growing pains, but I think we're going down the right path with this, in my opinion. So
we feel that way. So I'm glad that you do as well. Shannon, you want to get to cash? Sorry.
Absolutely. So on page 9, you'll see the cash. So we would also like to modify the way that this is presented a little bit because I think it's kind of confusing. That first line with all the dashes is a summary line. So there are the four CDs, each at $250,000 a piece. So I don't know, Bill, do you want to speak to the CDs first in regards to M&T?
Well, first of all, I'll just mention the Connect One and Empire State Bank. Those are the two new CDs that the board,
Yep.
This board approved, and they were open. M&T is one we've referenced that came up in the audit discussion. We had a CD that matured a while ago, and I guess prior administration was trying to move it into another CD, but the bank wasn't happening, let's put it that way. And we came on board and we tried to reconcile that. They actually kind of gave us interest, retro dated the interest, but it took until about 3 weeks or a month ago until we finally got it resolved. It did hold up our audit, frankly. It was one legitimate holdup we had there. But now we have that money, that cash in hand, 1.6 million and change. And I think, as Shannon said before, we have a meeting coming up where we'll look at investment opportunities. I think that's one of the things with your approval, we would look to reinvest that money.
we'll look at that at the finance committee.
Correct.
As an agenda. On the finance committee, I think, like today we had an audit committee, and it was kind of obvious, we're talking about the audit. But on the finance committee, we'd ask for staff to put together a distinct, maybe bold agenda, so we understand what's gonna happen, and maybe some stuff that can be said ahead of time, so we're just not looking at it the day of. So those type of things, I think it'll be, finance committee will be more formal and more regimented with distinct things that we'll talk about. That'll have some meat on the bone per se, where the audit meeting is just about the audit. Really. So, all right, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So you'll see that 1.6 is in here with the balances. So overall, between IDA and Accelerator, there is $9,718,040. And the $11,372,805 below is including the OCFC. So I just wanted to point that out. So that's cumulative cash in bank right there.
The agencies combined.
Yep.
We love it.
So a lot of money, and we're gonna look to see what we can do with it to maybe earn some more.
Yes,
Thank you, Shannon.
yeah, can we regularly review interest rates on this account? Because the fluctuations, I checked on CDs with the credit union, and 2 years or something like 2 point something%.
Yeah, if you remember, Dr. Onak, we had a quick discussion about this earlier, meaning in previous meetings. There are certain financial institutions we can invest with, and there's other ones we can't. Unfortunately, it was determined that the credit unions are not something that we're eligible to do it. But correct, as part of the finance committee, I think a standing item on that committee is going to be with staff and with RBT Consulting to identify, literally rates, whether, I know the audit said an RFP, it's less of a formal process, it's more of a shopping process where you shop it, you get them all listed, and it gets presented to us from staff and consulting staff to make a recommendation at finance to bring to the board to make a determination. You're absolutely right. And I think rates are slightly going up, so I hopefully we'll be able to take some additional money to do that, but that's to be determined.
So as we shop around, we'll be checking those rates again, and we'll come back to you with, where things stand.
Following up on the question, so is that municipal law that says we can't go to, is that municipal law that says we can't go to credit?
I think we got, council gave us opinion on it prior. It's based upon our state statutes, what we're allowed to
Yeah.
invest in and stuff. So,
Yeah.
council, do you remember the exact analysis that we did on that? Sue?
Are you talking to me or Russ? About when it was done?
I think I think it was of your opinion, but correct me if I'm wrong, about the credit union question. About how we, as a municipal agency, we're not allowed to take our money and invest it into credit union.
I
That was
believe-
something that was.
I believe that is correct. I am not positive it was me that issued the opinion. Russ, do you recall if that was your? And if it was me, I
It was actually-
apologize. It's just late in the day, but
No,
I'm gonna cut you off because it wasn't you either. It was when the county attorney was acting as general counsel.
Yeah, they looked into it. I think it's in our minutes someplace.
and Sue is right that you're limited into what you can invest your money as a public body. So I don't recall, Sue, frankly, if the opinion was given whether or not you can invest in a credit union or not. I just don't remember.
I don't either. But I do think it was before you or I. I think it was the county attorney, as Bill said, who gave the opinion.
We can share, so that's something we had shared at that time, really the protocols, the parameters we have, we can share that with the board again now that we have.
That'd
the
be great.
numbers.
Yeah, I think there was a state statute. They like quoted it right from that
Exactly.
that said exactly what you can do. So let's share that again.
Shannon, anything else? Any other questions for Shannon?
Okay, so that is the financial reports. We have specifics on the, since we did not have a finance meeting, we need to go through presenting the accounts payables, both on the reoccurring, and on the monthly and on the all other categories.
And if I could, before that, Mr. Chairman, this too was not explicitly on the agenda, but again, because we're at the end of the quarter, Shannon did a great job of telling you kind of where we are looking, if you extrapolate after the first quarter. I'm just going to add a few to that if I can very quickly. So I'll be going back to page 8 and focusing on the third column, the budget. So we're a quarter of the way through the 2022 approved budget. I just want to tell you very quickly, I'm going to move fast. The first item there, $810,000, that's closing costs. Shannon referred to that as well. Those are after we close projects. We have a number of projects in the pipeline and have been approved, but they've not yet been closed. Our council is working with the applicants on that. And there's
They closed means, not closed means started, which I think that
where our transaction is completed and there are fees that were levied that are much greater than the $5,000 application fee. So talking about application fee, by the way, I budgeted. We went a year, 14 months without any applications. So in building the 22 budget, I was conservative, said that we'd get 2 applications. which is $10,000 in fees. We've gotten 32.5 already just on the IDA side of the house because we've had a rush of applications. So I think that clearly shows that unless these projects are all derailed, that they will eventually, the transactions will close and we'll receive those fees. And I think we'll be in good shape, probably exceed those. We're also on track for subtenant rents. Shannon referred to that as well. Going down to expenses, salaries are on track as well. If you kind of do that simple math, plus we have in the 22 budget, for those that don't know, we budgeted starting for the second half of the year to reintroduce the chief operating officer position. That's something based upon where we are in the progress we're making. I'm not sure that'll happen in July, but that's in the future. But with that considered, we're on track salary wise. Let's see, fiscal audit, again, that's local labor, but our audit numbers will be in line. Professional fees, again, that's really legal counsel. That too is heavy now, but it will be in line with what we have budgeted for the year. Office supplies and such are on track. Skipping all the way down to expenses, rent is on track, as Shannon explained. Utilities as well, actually we're low on that, which I'm happy because those costs only continue to increase. Jumping down to maintenance, also on track, actually a little low. That's cleaning and other maintenance related activities. Internet and telephone, a little high on that, but we've had some exorbitant expenses. We've tried to change some of the services. We had a couple roadblocks in there, but we're going to be not far off, but that will be a little over budget. And skipping down to marketing and PR, that's a little low right now. I plan to issue an RFP for new marketing and PR support. We just have a lot of other items and other RFPs that were more pressing. So that's probably going to be released in June, and you'll see the activity and the spending increase accordingly on that. And external projects and agents. The 10, we're well behind on that. Oh, right, because that was other organizations that we would give funding to in the past, and we were much more conservative about that. And frankly, with new council sharing with us really the guidelines and again the parameters within what we can be funding, we thought better of that, and we're not making those allocations for 2022. So that number is going to be far below. So I think you're seeing us generally on track, and I think we'll be over under in the right directions. I think, generally speaking, that's a quick look at where we are for it. And if I can move on to payables, I'm going to thank Shannon for her time, and I'll talk to you next week. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Shannon.
Chairman,
Yes, go ahead.
before Bill goes into payables,
Yes.
question I have, and legal counsel is here. Is there such a thing as a letter of certification, Bill certifying that all the payables here are accurate and on time? So
Letter of
we then
certification?
save going through, he certifies it and maybe even notarized. So we'd have to spend that hour going through line by line. Because doing either an internal audit or a review by finance, if we find something out of order, then he gets called onto the carpet.
No, exactly sure what you're asking. I think the process that we're gonna have, and this is something for the board to determine, these will be presented at the finance committee. Be talked about in detail at the
Same
finance
process,
committee,
but not in this.
and then it'll be presented, the finance committee agrees that this is what we want to present moving forward, and it'll just be voted upon. With any other question, we'll always have ability to ask questions, but they won't go in there line by line. Unfortunately, we haven't had the opportunity to have a finance committee meeting yet,
Yeah.
so we have to go through it.
So no, so that's why I'm asking that is there are a number of different finance boards I've sat on as committees. As part of the board, we never had to go through the line by line, but we had the CFO or certify that what they're presented is valid.
Yeah, so one of the things that we did know, and I think
Yeah.
we could maybe get to that point.
Yeah,
Because when we first came on, when the previous board was removed and the new board came on, a vote was determined at that time by that board that everything would be presented in a public session so that the public will have full access and they'll see our discussions happen. I think at that time it was drastically needed, very much needed.
Yeah.
I think we can get to that point. And I
Okay.
think that, well, I don't know what that determines. It's something we'll have to work with council and with staff on what this certification or notarization or whatever, but correct. I mean, I hate having to waste, I say waste, because it's kind of repetitive. And sometimes we have the same questions, but unfortunately, at this point, we can either have them presented or not, and I think it's in our best interest to be as fully transparent, have them presented, but in a quick fashion. But knowing that if we have any questions, we did receive these days in advance instead of hours in advance, so hopefully you had a chance to look at it and you might have some asterisks next to a couple.
I did not get it.
Okay. So,
But I felt that, when I look back at the other months, the names are the same.
yeah, there's a lot of
There
reoccurring
was
stuff,
no-
especially on the one
no
title
abbreviations.
Yeah.
I just think a lot of the things we've been discussing are things that we're getting there, right? We're not
Yeah.
there yet. We made huge strides. I mean, going through all this stuff, hiring people, getting other people in place and things. So I think it's up for me, I would agree, but in the beginning, we had to do all these things.
I agree with that.
We're gonna get there.
Okay.
We will be there.
And I also think as the accelerator site shut down, that we're not involved with those leases. The
It'll be a lot
expense, it'll be a lot more condensed.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, so without further questions, well, staff, go ahead and move forward so we can keep on track.
Okay, so I'm gonna move quickly through this itemized list of bills, but just stop me at any time for further information. So going, again, we're on page 10, sorry, and going straight from the top. Central Hudson Gas and Electric, of course, that's utilities for 334 Avenue of the Americas. Complete Document Solutions. The first charge is for the copies that we create, and the second is the actual lease for the copier. Lamella is trash and is sanitation for 334, the New Windsor accelerators, by the way, that addresses. Verizon is, this is at the former Newburgh, City of Newburgh accelerator. We have stopped paying rent there, but we've transferred utility services over to the landlord or the subtenants there. There was a bit of a layover, of course. Last month, we had 603 changeover and a little end that we paid for. This is the end of service for 605. So that's in there as well. First Columbia, that is, first of all, Central Hudson. The access point billing is actually our utilities. That's how they code our utility services coming from our landlord. And then CAMs and rent. That's actually a true up that we pay a set amount for rent in CAM every month, and then it's trued up at the end of the year. And then there's some sort of reconciliation there. So we had a credit of $1,200 after the true up. Altiva, that's our internet in Warwick, the Warwick Accelerator. 88 Studios for the support Shannon mentioned for AV and support from Dennis and Dean Ray. Mid Hudson News, that's a banner ad that we pay for each month. KR Cleaning is cleaning for the headquarters. Frontier, that's Ethernet and wireless service in Middletown, it's exorbitant. It's something I've talked about in probably almost every monthly meeting. We tried to downgrade that service when the contract expired, and we ran into a number of problems, including IT telling us that the wiring would need to be completely reworked at Middletown to allow us to bring in a completely different service. And it just doesn't seem to be feasible. So we may be riding this out until our lease expires in Middletown in November, unfortunately. I could revisit that, but that's been a saga. Let's see, Morangi is trash and recycling into Middletown Accelerator. The credit card payment process, that's one of our 2 credit cards. That includes our yearly Microsoft licenses, QuickBooks for our 3 companies, GoDaddy for domains, Microsoft for our email service, some interest for late payments and such. So that's what that is. Also, my attendance at the Orange County Partnership event. Next, I skipped one, I'm sorry. Card member services is what I just described. Credit card payment process, that's our other credit card, our Zoom charge, stamps.com, our Google G Suite, that's the partnership event. My attendance at a New York State EDC online academy, and our water each month. So those are the things that are included there. Morangi, again, is trash and recycling in Middletown. Credit card payment process, that's the one I just described. National Business Leasing is our copier in Middletown. ITC is our remote monitoring of our data network. We had a problem with last year, so ITC rebuilt that network and is providing off-premises support. The Times Herald Record, those are charges for the advertising for their notices, for our public hearings. It was asked last time if we could include which projects they were for, so we did for this. West Warwick, the battery storage projects 1, 2, and 3, Sativa, and to resume the Sativa public hearing second time. So those are the charges for that. Those are all of, no, one more, I'm sorry, Charter Communication, that's our Time Warner fiber account at the headquarters. So this is a total 22,066. For recurring, this is the first tranche, which is all recurring bills. You want me to continue to vote on each? Okay. The second section, page 12, are bills for which we have monthly contracts. UHY Advisors, that's really the work they did in transitioning over to RBT. They had give us an estimate for that, and that's the bill for that. Low-key bill for our site reporting, for local labor monitoring. That's for 3 projects, Fiorello, also known as Green Thumb Industries in Warwick, Orange Inn in Goshen, and 360 Millions, also in Goshen. That's in Middletown, of course. And last is our RBT, our payment to our accounting or finance advisor as well. Those are our monthly contract bills totaling $5,178. The last third tranche here is all other. The first 4 holdings, again, that's the former Newburgh, City of Newburgh Accelerator. Those are just rents that we continue to receive from our former subtenants that we're simply getting on to our former landlords. That's what that payments are. Town of New Windsor, that's actually, that's a payment for what we felt was, we have been going back and forth with the Town of New Windsor as to what we still owe there. That's what we feel we owe. That's a payment to settle up with them on any remaining rents. Bousquet Holstein, of course, is, this is actually a pass-through fee on our application fees, half of them to our general counsel who's handling those transactions. Again, that's for Sativa, Walgreens, and West Warwick. Francis Roth is our stenographer, so that's just for the transcripts for our public hearings. Sativa, and I have to look up the other ones, it's not listed here, but our most recent ones. MRB, that is a cost benefit analysis tool. The former cost benefit analysis provider went out of business, essentially, they retired. And I looked at a few different options because it's something we need to prepare for every project and for our public hearings. So that's $1,000 we paid for a tool that we can use over and over for various projects. It was cost effective based upon the others I looked at, and the tool has proven to be quite easy to work with. The accelerator, this last thing here, this is an enormous number, but $250,000. This kind of goes back to our other conversation that we have separate entities, financially speaking. And when we run out of money and paying all the accelerator bills, we transfer money over from the IDA entity into the accelerator. So we're not funding anything additional for the IDA. It's really just to help that side of the financial, the accounting side of the house to make sure we have sufficient funds. And the last is Mount St. Mary application fee. That really, we received it by the IDA, but it was for a bond transaction. So that's OCFC. So we actually just have to transfer that $5,000 over to the right side of the house. That is $273,545.82, which is again for all other invoices we receive.
Okay, a lot of information.
Yeah.
So we're looking at any questions or concerns on page 10, 11, 12, or 13?
I do, sir.
Sure, go ahead, no, please.
I'll wait until Wednesday, go ahead.
No problem.
Okay, I think I have 3
Okay.
questions. This is more looking forward. Bill, you mentioned the IT contract in Middletown that we couldn't get out of it. When does it expire first?
So it expired, but it's for fiber optic service, very expensive fiber optic. It's expired, but the alternatives we're not able to, we were gonna subscribe to DSL, we actually put an order in, and they told us after the fact we could not get that. Looking at the technicians going on site, the way the infrastructure was set up in the building.
So is this month with the expired contract?
It is.
And so who is the new, what I'm thinking of, since it's month to month, they could pull it at any time. So who do we have in the?
What do we replace it with is our dilemma, because we do, our tenants, or subtenants there do expect internet service. So our problem is just canceling the service, they won't have that.
So after that, it doesn't affect us then for internet there, because it was the,
After November or?
no, if they were to pull out now, we wouldn't have any impact. We don't have to do some kind of installation to keep it going. Because I'm saying,
We have to do some sort of installation, some like one-time expenses in order to use a different service, a more cost-effective service.
so they are in line already, they're in place already, the difference. I'm just
No,
worried
no,
that they decide to flip the switch and we are dead, that's why.
So I'm not sure why there's any threat of that.
Okay,
I don't think.
We're paying the bill.
okay,
Yeah,
all
right,
right, all right.
that's-
Yeah, we're paying.
Okay, all right.
I guess the better question is, do our leases with the tenants obligate us to provide internet services?
I believe so. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I believe so, but I'll verify that.
That's a bigger question, because if we're not obligated to provide it to them,
And it's ending soon. It's ending when this lease is. When this lease
So
is
it's
soon.
no matter
Thanksgiving.
what, no matter what, so I don't know, we flip the switch and that's it.
Right.
Yeah. The other one I have, this is confusing to me, so I'm not sure. On page 13, the 273, that money coming to us, because I'm not seeing it in the financials earlier. So I'm not sure. I know it's somewhere there, but I'm not sure how.
The 273 is everything you're seeing above it, including $250,000, which is really kind of like a transfer, right?
That's okay, but where on the financials does that end up? Is it in the P&L? Is it in the balance sheet? That, I'm not sure. Because I see, let's say March is 7,000 coming in revenue. The balance sheet, which is not here, but I'm not sure where it is. That's
The 250. Where it
the
shows.
page.
The whole thing.
Yeah, the whole thing, yes, I'm not sure. So it's where, I don't, could be going from somewhere, but where is it landed for us?
I think that's a great question, and I regret letting Shannon go.
Well,
No.
Would it make sense that it will be in April? Because we're
Yes.
expending it in April. So what we reviewed on the statements are March. This should be in April because we're expending it in April. We're moving it in April. So it should be in the April statements. But,
Granted, but it's in March here. So since it's March.
well, no, this is, the first half is the March financials. The second half is the expenses in April.
So like the legal bill, like the legal, you asked about the legal fees?
Yeah, but the approval
Last-
date is April 20th.
like, For example,
Yeah,
our general counsel fees, for example, not to pick on her. Last month, we approved payments. They would be showing them this month's financials. So the revised ones,
no, that part I'm satisfied.
So same thing here, though.
Yeah.
You're approving the payments, the
Oh,
$250,000. It won't be accounted for.
So we have,
No.
okay.
No.
Right here, we got it, right here.
We
No,
gotta.
I don't know that. You two guys, I see you
No,
guys
no, but I'm
sign
saying,
everything.
they're not gonna be in there, they're here.
Well, what I'm saying, everyone I see you guys signing that sheet of paper.
It's not until we approve this that we do that.
I don't know what that was. So, okay, I'm happy, yeah, I guess I'm that way if I see something
Yeah, yeah.
else going on. So.
Okay, so you had another one, Noel, a third one?
No, I got consolidated. They got consolidated.
I do have a question.
Sure. Sure.
We're spending $1,000 a month to advertise in the Mid-Hudson Times for a banner. Are you getting any kind of feedback as to distribution of that? Where is it being seen? Is it the highest and best use of $1,000? Or
Great
would we
question.
be better off creating smaller subcontracts with the more local newspapers throughout the county?
Great question. I think this was procured prior to all of this, obviously. And the best answer to that, I think it's not only just a banner ad, but we also have the Hudson News cover us at our meetings and our projects in a light that we want them. So Bill works directly with them on content to make sure that the positive news about economic development gets out. Unfortunately, it doesn't get out in the local newspaper that way, in the daily local newspaper, I'll say. But there is some additional stuff I would love to be able to do in the local newspapers that are free, that everyone gets at home, like the Chronicle or the
Right.
Gazettes or
I'm
different
just-
things like that. And that's, I think, a one major entity that basically publishes them all, but there's different content writers that are in that. And that's something to definitely think about when it comes down to.
Well, I know when I think of the Mid-Hudson News, I think of it as a Dutchess County newspaper. I don't really think of it.
So that's Mid-Hudson Times. Mid-Hudson News is the online version. That's
Yeah, but I
it's based in Middletown.
Yeah, but I don't really, it's not something
Okay.
that stirs up, oh, I want to research things that are going on or see about Orange County.
Okay.
I'm just saying, if we want to be a public entity and have that transparency, clarity, we need to be in places that your average household is going to look for it.
You make a great point, and it's in my report a little bit later, but I mentioned I attended the New York State EDC's virtual Spring Academy for IBAs. And one of the things they talked about was PR and communication. And they talked about the importance of being hyper local and using your weekly papers and such. We haven't done a good enough job with that, that's for sure. And I think we need to. I think it was really underscored, and you're making the same point. I will say MidHudsonNews.com, with the way, and not to disparage the Times Herald Record, but their staff continues to dwindle. They're not breaking any news. Hank Gross of Mid-Hudson News is really the only entity that's breaking news. So, and in my opinion, it's for the whole Mid-Hudson. Dutchess gets a lot of play, the city of Poughkeepsie alone, but I think they're generating a lot. So that's why, as the chairman saying, what we're trying to do more. I actually have coordinated calls with Mr. Gross after these meetings so that we can talk about the positive things and try and get it out there. He's the only one that's breaking anything or sharing that. So re-examining the $1,000 for the banner ad, we've used it a few different ways. When we put bond council RFP out, we linked it to that, and so that people click on it, would come to our notice for those. We did that a couple of times, but it's something we talked about re-examining whether or not it's the best investment.
Yeah, and the only thing I want to say, that again, that's something where we've, through Mike, leadership and the guys that I've been here to see, they've cut so much out of that. And this is where we are left. So it was gonna be re-examined. So I knew that, whatever, but there was other items that were,
Bigger ticket.
bigger ticket items that have been removed to be re-examined, but this is one that we have, this is like the last smallest piece that was kept. And those, whether it's committee meetings, they said there was transition of people, new people coming in, and so this to me was something, that's why I don't really bring it up, because I knew it was gonna be re-examined, maybe a committee, maybe whatever, but there's a lot that was taken out of it to bring it to where
I'm
it
saying
is.
just in my 3 meetings, this is, a lot of the fat has been trimmed.
Mhm.
I just,
Yeah, whatever, but I'm just saying.
but that's a constant process. It's-
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's something we have to always be revisiting, because we have an
100%.
obligation to the public to watch the dollars.
Exactly. I expect these
Absolutely.
questions every month when something stands out for you to question why we're doing
No,
it.
I'm not saying it, but that's for me. Anyway.
And I really like the local stuff. I know that on the multiple projects that we did in Warwick, the Warwick advertiser
Yes.
covered us unbelievably well. They got just take quotes from Bill. I tend to not give quotes as a chairman. I say, if you want to quote me from the meeting. So I usually say stuff a little bit more than I probably should, but I say it so that they can use that, so they don't bother me that way, so I don't have to worry about it, and those type of things. But yeah, I think, constantly thinking about that. I think if you want to share a couple ideas, I think we can definitely think about that. And whether if staff writes it, we write it, or we unfortunately maybe have to hire someone to write something, whether if it's an article, whether if it's something that we want to get out, it's all to be determined. But I think we have a small budget for that.
The point was, it was just something we should probably take a look into.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's an online site, and Mid-Hudson contributes towards it. And there's multiple small newspapers that are all in there. And I look at it a lot of time lately, but I look at it, and Mid-Hudson is in there, and the IDA has been mentioned in there. So there is an online
Yeah.
that promulgates all the local stuff. And
Yeah.
Mid-Hudson being part of it.
Yeah.
And this site.
I think Mid-Hudson also runs the statewide news network, and that's part of it. And a lot of the radio stations and others will use them as a source. You'll hear Hank's voice all of a sudden, you drive down the road and he's talking about IDA projects. You're like, no one told him to say that, but it was an article that he then verbalizes and gives to like WHD or you know, the local ones.
By the way, he'll interview me oftentimes, sorry.
Yeah, and he'll
And
record you.
interviews, right, so for our shovel ready RFQ we put out, we did a long
Like that.
interview
So I
with
think,
that.
yeah, there's all those types.
And he does a morning, I'll call it a podcast, but it's, you know, it's
Yeah,
3 minutes or whatever, you'll hear it on other stations sometimes. And we were highlighted, I was highlighted in an interview with that, and he's done that a few times, so
Yeah.
we do get substantial return with him. It's not really quid pro quo, I think it's, again, we've given them $1,000 for the banner ad for years, but we have utilized it, one way or another, we really try.
Let's look into doing some other stuff,
Yeah.
definitely especially when we have projects in a certain municipality, that's when we do a public hearing or, you know, and whether we notice it in many, you know, I saw that we did public notices in the Town Child Record, and it was like, say, $400 some odd. I'm sure it's not that expensive in a publication, if we can get in front of them quick enough to make sure it's before the next public hearing type of thing. Or maybe even a little article written about the book.
Well, I think with that, and Sue Kassoff would probably know this better than me, we have to declare what publication our public notices will be put in. So if, as a committee, you declare it as the Times Herald Record, I don't think we can deviate it. I'm gonna refer that to Sue.
You have to
Well, they should-
publish in a newspaper of general circulation are you guys still there?
You are.
We're here, but hold on, we're just
A little better.
refreshing the screen or.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Oh, okay, thank you. You have to publish in a newspaper of general circulation in the area in which the project is located. So for you, you know, you have one county paper, right?
Yes,
Correct.
basically.
Correct.
One county daily. Yeah.
So the bigger question would be, if there was a project, let's say in Warwick, does it have to go in the county paper or could it go just in the Warwick newspaper?
I think if the Warwick newspaper is a newspaper of general circulation, widely circulated, general circulation, then that would be okay.
Yeah.
Because that's where the project is located, if that's less expensive, if that's what you're thinking. The publication costs really should be passed on to your developers. And the county newspaper is probably the broadest, most generally circulated paper, probably has the greatest readership. But I think
Correct.
either would be okay.
Okay.
I think it's dwindling, but yeah, I think some of the locals have probably got this. All right, now, well, we'll revisit.
The other issue you might have just in terms of publication is you have to give 10 days published notice, a minimum of 10 days published notice. And some of the smaller newspapers don't have a regular, their publication dates do not coincide sometimes with when you need to get something in the newspaper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dr. Olam, sorry.
Yeah, I'm looking at page 13,
Yes.
1-3, the last page here. I needed just some clarification. The $1,000 for the MR group, we own that now. It's a package that.
Correct, that's not a recurring fee, that's a one-time, there are additional charges for them if we go to them for a very specific cost benefit analysis that they do. But yeah, that's the cost for the tool, and I've used it 4 times already.
I'm looking at the specification here in terms of date, February 13 to March 12. Is that necessary to have that date there? Is that date should be there? I mean, that specification should be there. I mean,
Is that like a year-long, is that a year-long fee, or I think you only have it down as like a 2-week fee?
It's frankly a one-time fee, so I'm not sure about that time frame. That's a good question. I can clarify that.
That might be in there.
Okay.
All right, any further questions, concerns? With that, I'll entertain a motion to accept the financials and the payables as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Sue, second? Second. Thank you, Paul. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Carried unanimous. All right,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, go
I
ahead.
apologize. I have to leave again. Hopefully we can talk about this next week.
Yes.
Figure that out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you for what you
everybody.
do.
Yeah, next time over. Thanks, folks.
Okay, chairman's report. I'll go into it pretty quickly and then we'll go into Bill's report. A couple items that I just wanted to bring up. FYI, some of our previous projects are finalized and open. Orange Inn / Limoncello opened up the other day. It was something that this board incentivized with financial assistance for their entire project. And just wanted to let everybody know about it. They didn't have an official grand opening yet, but they had a soft opening. If and when they do an official one, I'd ask for staff to invite all the members to it so that we can all partake in it. It's literally right here on Main Street in Goshen. And they spent a boatload of money rehabbing a facility that I think will be an asset not only to Goshen itself, but to the entire county and the entire region. I know a lot of people are talking about it and a lot of positive news with that. And I'm sure there'll be more projects like that finish up their construction and begin to open. Two other things I wanted to talk about. One, firsts, and I say this hand in cheek kind of. We're going to be experiencing a lot of firsts. Since this board, our 7 members have put together, there's been a couple firsts that's happened in Orange County. And I think in the region, I'll say excluding Westchester, because I'm not an expert on Westchester real estate transactions, but we're seeing some firsts. Now, what I mean by that, we're seeing a project that's coming that has come and that has agreed to come, that they are being told that they need to lease an entire building while they don't need the whole thing. That is a first in Orange County. I don't want to go into specifics and to really say anything. We can talk offline about that. But that's a market trend that is puts a big light up in my head. Is that if a company needs 100,000 square feet, but the building's 200, they have to take the 200,000 square feet and find someone else for the other 100,000 square feet, not the building owner. So it's showing that there is strength in the market, but I think it's also something that we have to watch for as a first, because as entities want to come, if they have to expend extra money to do something or take on space that they don't want, it could be a detriment as well. So it's something that we'll monitor. It's nothing that we can control, but it's a first. Another first is that we're seeing some of our host municipalities and taxing jurisdictions wanting to get fees from projects above and beyond their normal, I'll say, schedule of fees that they get for planning board reviews or zoning board reviews, more in line with trying to have, I don't want to use the term impact fee, but a fee, not knowing how it's calculated, those type of things. While projects come and go, and attracting projects and retaining projects are exactly what economic development is all about, having a fee that is unknown or having a fee that is brought up after the fact is something that can really turn projects off, especially when you're dealing with site selectors. I think we're experiencing that as a first in Orange County with some local project that happened to, and hopefully it won't affect the future projects on that site or in that vicinity or in that municipality, but nothing like I said, that we can control, but these are firsts that we have to recognize, because in the future, it may affect our ability to attract projects or incentivize projects or get deals done. So those are all things just to be out there on the lookout for. Lastly, I'm very glad to see that we had a committee meeting today. It was our first as a new board, and those that could attend, thank you. We're looking to do more of them, and obviously communication with staff and aligning them up will be key. We'll ask for council to give us a brief synopsis on this public meeting stuff that happened in the budget, which is a weird way that the state budget is imposing upon municipalities and boards of us that are like us. So I know there's some stuff that was sent around by email. And then lastly, when it comes to committee meetings, obviously finance, we talked a lot about doing stuff in finance committee, but obviously we need an accelerator committee. We need to be able to make a presentation and then as a committee come to the board with a recommendation of what we're looking to do. We have some significant expenditures coming due at the end of term, and while I believe we're all heading in the right direction and not potentially looking to renegotiate or to re-up them, it's something that the board needs to vote upon. It's something we all need to be cognizant of. If you haven't received the information or if you need it again, I'd ask you to talk with Bill, because it's going to really get down into the detail. We're going to get down into lease termination dates, amounts that people are asking for, and what we want to do moving forward, and what we want to help direct staff to do moving forward to help some of these existing businesses retain and stay within Orange County. I think we've helped a couple of them so far. There's a lot more that'll be in the very near future. And I think by the end of this year, I think when we start to put together the 2023 budget, I think that's when we'll really have our eyes open about different things that'll come off the ledger, but more importantly, maybe some new stuff like the shovel ready program and things of that nature that'll come on the program. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Terrific. Okay, I'm gonna breeze through a few of these things. I did have first on my list, the remote meetings allowance. Sue, if you're comfortable with that, we'll put you on the spot. Would you mind explaining to the board exactly that provision that's in the new budget?
Sure.
Understand.
So there is a provision in the budget that amends the open meetings law. I agree that it is a terrible way to legislate, but there it is. And what it does really is it allows many entities, but an IDA would be one of them, for you to hold a public hearing to consider whether or not the board wanted to adopt a resolution to allow for remote meetings. But what it would mean is that you, assuming you did it, you would have to live stream video, you would have to videotape all of your meetings. A minimum of a quorum of you would have to be present at whatever location you were actually holding the meeting. The balance of the board, above and beyond a quorum, could participate remotely, but only if you had an extraordinary circumstance. So the process is not for the benefit of the board members, but it is to offer the public a way to continue to participate remotely, which, to be honest with you, makes no sense because you can do that now. You can't, you have to be in person, but you can allow the public to participate remotely. The challenge with it is the very last provision of the change in the law says that if you elect to adopt this process, you must comply with the Americans for Disability Act, which means that you would have to hire a sign language interpreter to be present at each of your meetings and broadcast accordingly. That's what I think it means. There's obviously no case law on it, but it does say that you have to comply with ADA requirements. So I don't know how this helps you as a board. But those are the requirements. So if you want to do it, you first need to notice a public hearing and consider, take comments from the public as to whether or not they're in favor or not in favor. And then you have the option of adopting a resolution that would put in place these provisions. Right now, the effective date is immediately, but it goes through, let me just say, it has a termination date of July 1, 2024. So it's kind of like this pilot program, and there's a provision in there that requires a report to be made to the governor and others as to how effective it is, not by you, but they tell, there's a provision for reporting in there. So in my opinion, this is an effort by the state to recognize that people may want to still have remote hearings, but it misses the mark in terms of drafting. So I'm happy to answer questions if I can. My recommendation is I don't see how this benefits the board.
I would just, one point that I would say, if you have any best practices as other boards are implementing stuff, just keep us in the know on how others are doing it. I know some boards meet more frequently than we do. So just ask you to keep up to date on it.
I certainly will. As of I sit here right now, I don't know anybody who's doing it, but it is relatively new. I mean, obviously. So.
Yeah.
So Sue, I have a question.
Yeah.
Since the ADA compliant, could it not also be closed caption instead of a sign language interpreter?
I think so. I mean, I will be honest with the board. I haven't gone back and read all of the ADA compliant provisions. If you are interested in doing it, I certainly will do that and brief you on what they all are. Obviously, some of them wouldn't apply at all because of the nature of the meeting, but yes, I think it could mean that.
Your thoughts on we generate those? Or-
There's software that you can get, integrated software that will do voice to text across the screen while you're doing it, which is a lot more economical. Orange County does not have a lot of licensed sign language interpreters. And again, it's to be recorded. Having it with a voice to text option, it makes it a lot more easily accessible. Sometimes when you're dealing with cameras and stuff, I know I have a hard time with reading some of the sign language. Even, New York City stuff where they have a ASL on every meeting, on every, photo journal with lighting and stuff and people moving around, it can be harder to read than screens.
I think Zoom has some sort of feature like that too. I think.
Yeah.
We can see what we can do.
I'm just saying it's a cheaper integrate than hiring an interpreter.
They may not be able to understand that because of the audio.
All right, move on.
Okay. All right, keep moving here. We had a board orientation that Sue Katzoff led with our new board members last week. I thought it was successful. If there's any feedback of how we could do a better job of that, please, we'll gladly take that. There was a new board members took part in an ABO online training today. Most of our board members have done that. I think one member could not make that, so I'll help reschedule that. But we want to make sure everyone gets to that quickly. Our Paris reports were due March 31st. We were not able to submit those reports, certify and submit them because our audit was not yet complete. We talked about the delay on the audit in the committee meeting, happy to talk to anyone on the side about that. But now that the report has been, the audit has been approved, we're waiting for the electronic copies that do not say draft, and we'll be uploading those with all of our other Paris entries, which have been completed for weeks, by the way. We were ready to go by the March 31st deadline, but we'll be submitting that. We expect tomorrow that we can certify that then. Committees, Finance Committee is scheduled for May 3rd. That's Tuesday, May 3rd. And then we, as the chairman said, we need governance because we're going to talk about continuing 2 of our RFPs, local labor monitoring and RFP for bond council. That's going to governance and accelerator for the issues that the chairman talked about. And I'll maybe just highlight, look to schedule those the week of May 10th. And I'm just trying to nail down those dates. I keep pinging all of you for dates. Thank you for allowing me to do that. So I'll nail those down by tomorrow or Friday. I mentioned I attended the New York State EDC Virtual Academy. That was terrific. It was virtually all day. One of the final presenters was Russ Genzel, actually, and one of his colleagues. We had Empire State Development present the parts of the budget and bills that affect businesses. They talked again about marketing and PR. Earned media was a concept talked about, the need for transparency, even how boards go into executive session. All that's talking about how all that shapes the public perception of how transparent your agency is, which is of course one of the principles that we hold in high regard and want to do a better job with. Let's see a few other things. The importance of being hyper local, local blogs, weekly paper, social media groups, etc. There was a whole presentation on housing, how more IDAs are incentivizing housing now as a necessity, basically, and the benefits that it provides the local community outside of jobs. Talked about a whole presentation on carbon neutral programs and on deviations or amendments to agencies' UTEPs, the Universal Tax Exemption Policy. So it was excellent, a lot covered, happy to share more about it. The EDC next has their spring conference, which is in Cooperstown. That's May 25th through 27th. That's the one I went to last fall. It was pushed back due to COVID. There are board members that go, not a lot, but board members do attend that, whether it's this year or in future years. If you're interested in attending that, then that's something I'd love to talk about. We also
One thing I would ask on that, if any of our consultants or anybody's making a presentation, if you can use the Warwick example of a very positive project, whether they do it, the EDC does it, or if it's just general knowledge, I think it's something that to combat what happened the previous years about them using us as an example of what went wrong. I think maybe an example of what went right will go a long way. So
absolutely.
Any way you can get that in front.
Bill, you might want to reach out to Ryan Silva and ask him as he's putting the agenda together to consider that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were, for those that don't know, we were a case study in one of last year's breakout sessions where they talked about what not to do. It was on governance. Actually, Sue was one of the people that led that presentation. As I've said a few times, I was in the back of the room with a bag in my head. But we're in a much better place for sure. And I agree with the chairman. I think success stories already, and we will have more. So we need to make use of that. So definitely we'll do that. So that's coming up. If you're interested in that conference, please let me know. We also had a first of its kind, a regional IDAs meeting where it's been talked about with my colleagues in the region and myself, and we pulled it off on April 5th. We had our first meeting. It was over in Dutchess County at Think Dutchess, where we had representatives, leadership from Orange, Dutchess, Ulster, Rockland, Sullivan County, Greene County. A couple of people couldn't make it, but it was an excellent meeting. We find that we have so much in common that we need to work together on. And I suggested to the group, there are opportunities, even I think, done carefully, and maybe some joint marketing efforts, whether it's joint education of the public on matters that the public needs to understand, that the facts are on IDAs, pilots, et cetera, and even perhaps some regional marketing, whether it's one of my big pushes, which is growing the tech sector here. Sometimes we may not have the critical mass or the resources to promote it, to advertise it, market it on our own, but as a group we could. So regardless of what we do in the future, it was a great meeting, and we have another one planned for next month. Our pipeline continues to be full. Every week I'm talking to new potential applicants with serious interest in applying, so that's great. The West Warwick project, Convergent Energy, the battery storage project, that's one that has been new for us. It's been new for the Orange County Real Property Department on how to do the valuation and to map out the pilot schedule. So it's been a learning process for everyone, again, including this board. We're going to continue to try and get you more information. That will likely be in front of you for our next board meeting on May 20th, but we'll make sure we continue to give you more information on that. I have a conference call with Orange and Rockland tomorrow to talk about their perspective on it. So I've had questions from local officials and others saying, well, this is a bid put out, a project that was bid by O&R. Will these incentives ultimately be incentivizing O&R? Are they a recipient of this? So we have a call to discuss that. There are a lot of kind of tangential issues with this. And again, just in an effort to make sure we are as educated and informed as possible, we're going to continue to give you more information on that. And again, it will likely come before you in next month's meeting. If you have other questions, Sue, you and I have had a lot of dialogue. If there's others, please, let's keep that going. But accelerators, we're working with the town of New Windsor to try and relocate our tenants there. They've taken kind of a strong hand there, but we're continuing. I thank Sue Katzoff and her colleague Natalie Hempstead, who's really, really taken the weight of that and working with the attorney for the town of New Windsor. Warwick, things are steady there. We have very low expenses there. We have one of our best success stories there at Scripted Fragrances. Candle maker who continues to grow. She has 9 employees now, and she wants to take more space at the Warwick Accelerator. So we're working with her on a couple of new leases that will likely be in front of you for your consideration in May also. Middletown, again, our lease expires in November. We keep trying to keep it active there and kind of keep some lifeblood in there, but it's a struggle. And again, we'll be out in November. We have a notice that we drafted that I'll be getting out tomorrow to those tenants to make it clear in other locations. Our lease ends on this date. It's November 25th in this case. Well, we encourage you to work with our landlord to negotiate your own new lease. If you can't do that, we expect when our lease expires that you'll vacate the premises. We don't want the situation that we had in New Windsor where we made this clear to the town, time went on, we're no longer paying, but the tenants remain, and the town is looking for us to pay the additional rent. We don't think it's right. And again, Bousquet Holstein is really fighting for us in that regard, but we want to make sure we safeguard against that implication. So that's going out. I have looked into new signage at the headquarters. Most of our signage and our branding really highlights the accelerator for obvious reasons. We're looking to de-emphasize that. I got 3 quotes for a new sign outside the building. There was a big accelerator sign in our boardroom in the building that we took off ourselves. We repainted that ourselves just to save a few dollars. But I did get quotes between $2,000 and $2,500 for a new sign. We won't get into that now, but our lease expires in New Windsor in February. There's the question of, do we invest that in a sign? Can we move that? So that's something in a committee meeting, probably governance also. We'll revisit that, but wanted to know that we're doing the work on that. And I made presentations. I continue every month to present to Rotaries and such. I presented with the Orange County Partnership and my successor as the Director of Economic Development for the county, Steve Gross. We presented at the Association of Towns, Villages, and Cities, a very strong municipal leader network here locally. I attend most months. Again, we got to present, it was very well received. And the new Economic Development Director, Steve Gross, and myself presented at the NYSCAR conference, which is the New York State Commercial Association of Realtors. It's a local chapter of a strong network of commercial real estate brokers, part of the lifeblood of the economic development work we did. They do an annual conference. It was at Resorts World 2 weeks ago. Again, Steve Gross and I were part of that and presented, sharing the message that the IDA is open for business. So encourage the broker community to bring us deals. That's it. And we were in the news. I referenced it a couple times. There was an article in the Nuts and News about the West Warwick project, the battery project. And again, when we launched our RFQ for Shovel Ready, we got a lot of publicity on that. And I have those. I'll distribute these at the end of the meeting, so you have a copy. I normally send them. I just didn't send it to Tom. I think Kelly was on vacation, but I'll share hard copies. And I think that's it.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
I know there's a couple other items that board members would like to add. We're going to ask for you to hold that into reserve. We're going to go. I'd like to enter a motion to go into executive session to speak about matters that are involving our legal counsel. And I would like to invite Legislator Jim O'Donnell to attend with us, as he would like to go ahead and discuss some stuff with us.
Mr. Chair, just since Bill mentioned he's having a meeting tomorrow with ONR.
Yeah, conference call.
Yeah, regarding conversion.
Correct.
One of the questions I needed to ask them is, are they invested in conversion? Because conversion's presentation to us is that they cannot do this project without IT.
Right.
My interpretation, I was waiting later on in the year or something when this comes to us, but since Bill is having the meeting.
Sure.
I looked into what they are doing conversion. I think it's an excellent project. My concern is it has no employees that will be added as a project or when they start business. Relying on us to get them started, to me, from my background training, that's not a perfect business model. Since they have a parent and subsidiary and parent company with over $19 billion in assets. So to look for 5 million from us when they have this significant resource.
Yeah, I would just mention that, I'm glad you bring it up, and I'm sure Bill can ask about how they're set up. Obviously, there's not a litmus test when it comes to incentives, right? It's not part of the state statute where whether if a company has 19 billion or $19, anybody is eligible for incentives. It's not based upon the assets of the company. That's directly spelled out in all economic development programs. Secondly, I think this is another one of these firsts, right? We need to get more information. So I think we need to better understand how they're set up and stuff like that. And lastly, I think this board, I'll say the idea as a whole, has incentivized projects that didn't have permanent jobs, but they did it for the construction jobs and for the benefit to the community. So I think there's a couple different things we need to understand and get some cost benefit analysis to us. And obviously, we want to make sure that it's a proper type of project. Go ahead, Bill.
Why I mentioned the 19 billion, most of what I saw in our cost analysis, the companies have some assets on their books or some kind of cash. So I'm not seeing that yet, so I'm looking for the cost analysis on that. The other thing that I looked at, and I think I shared this with Bill a couple of months ago, it's an O&R project. And O&R stretches over 3 counties. But I couldn't, when I went to Rockland and I went to Sullivan, they didn't approach any of them to help them with this funding. So I'm saying to Bill, at the presentation when the attorney or somebody was here, I asked the question, how many zip codes? And the answer was several zip codes. So that inspired me to go find the several zip codes. Because I was looking for, since they're in Warwick, I was looking for the 2 zip codes in Warwick. And I said, whoa, O&R is in 3 counties. So is this funding all of O&R's territories, our funding? And is that part of what we are?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if, I don't know if funding is the right word to use.
Over 5 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know where you're coming up with 5 million, but I think it's more, does the state statute allow us to give it economic development assistance in the form of sales and use tax abatements, property tax abatements, or mortgage recording tax? I don't think this is a bondable project, but I could be wrong. So there's certain things, and it's more of an exemption than it is a funding or a giving of money. But let's get some more
Yeah, let's get
information
some more information,
so we can
yeah.
have a
Yeah.
proper presentation.
That's
made.
helpful.
Yeah,
for
so-
my
yeah.
call.
So
Yeah.
we may have some more items that we want to talk about, but it's getting late and Mr. O'Donnell's been patiently waiting, and I thank him for that. We were planning on going into executive session, but with some new information, I'd like to entertain a motion to go into executive session with the board, council, and Legislature O'Donnell, because he'd like to give us some updates on some potential matters that require us to be in executive session. So I'd like to make that motion. I'd like to get a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dean. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimous. Okay, welcome back, everybody. This is the IDA portion of the meeting dated April 20th, 2022. We just come out of executive session and back into live session. Any additional items that anyone would like to bring up or discuss?
Can I say yes here?
If you'd like to bring something up, no?
Just couple. First thing, I found this on the, from your set for your meeting that you went to. There was something like a $45 million grant for IDAs. So I can give this to you. Yeah, it kind of, it had IDAs somewhere in the middle of this, the whole lot of that. But it say if we are trying to do technology projects or something in our region, we can apply for
Doesn't mean you went to, not
No,
something.
it's something when you sent out something to me that, I found that and I said, hey, let me pull this out. So
When
that's
did
it.
Dr. Google?
No, it was, he sent that email, and it was like an attachment to the side, and I was curious, I saw technology money, and I said,
Oh,
okay.
you went on a click fest.
Yeah, so that's it. Mr. Chair, I'm just reducing mine down to maybe 2 items.
Whatever you need.
Yeah, so one of the things I looked upon is the task of the secretary. And I see Bill doing the roll call every meeting, but I found that should be the task of the secretary, doing the roll call, since that's the official way of a board. I don't know if that was something that was set up that Bill does the roll call
I mean,
in.
I think Bill runs the meeting, you understand?
Yeah, you really
Two of you guys coordinate.
Did we ask Sue that?
Well,
Sue, you able to hear that?
Was the question who can call the roll call?
You want to finish?
yeah,
I'm sorry, Sue, hold on a second.
the statement was made that Bill runs the meeting. And my statement is I love Bill, but he's not a board member. So it should be a board member by Robert's rule that does the roll call. So I don't know if there's something that said, let's waive that and we just run it that way. So the question is, who is it, a board member that should do the roll call? I know the chairman calls the board
Meeting to order.
meeting to order, and the secretary then determines that we have a quorum. So at this moment, the executive director is determining a quorum, but he technically is not a member of the board. So it should be a board member. I printed out all these things too.
Yeah, no, listen, that don't make sense, but understand, we're just here. I said that he was on Zoom before, it's a very difficult, we're getting there, that's my point. I agree with
Yeah,
you, it was
no,
like, we're getting there.
What I'm saying.
Some people have been talking semantics, move it back,
No, no.
which we can continue talking about, but
I think it depends on various boards. I've been in different boards and some of our boards, the same thing happens here. Somebody outside a non-board member would go through the meetings, read the meetings, and so it depends on which board. Varies from board to board.
All right, I'm just going by my knowledge, my experience, my exposure. I've sat on maybe 10 boards since I was 25. I've sat on the.
So do we have an
board of
opinion on
trustees.
this, opinion of council of who should be running, or not running, but who should be
Cool.
doing which responsibilities at a board meeting?
I guess I have never focused on whether or not the executive director can call the roll. I think it's almost immaterial because you are videotaped and live streamed. And the chairman is running the meeting, but probably technically, to be honest with you, under Robert's rules, the chairman should say everyone's present or who is present. But in this day and age, given how visible we are, it's, you know, it may be a distinction without, you know, meaning, but I would probably say Robert's rules most likely does say that the chairman should call the roll.
On each vote?
I'm sorry, Mike, did you ask me something else?
On each vote?
No, just the start of meeting.
Yeah, just the start of the meeting. I think that it's okay that Bill is asking, I mean, you're the one calling the motions, you're the ones asking for the vote. Bill's just going around and identifying, you know, asking people to state their position. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I think my point is missed though. Under Roberts, I've sat on the corner cooperative board, which I just got out, so I've been on there 6 years. And
But that's then, I mean, I was on the board for 7
Yeah,
years.
yeah, it's true, longer than I am, but it has always been the secretary of the board that does the roll call. I was also a county legislator. It's the clerk of the legislature that did the roll call. Same with the town board, United Negro College Board. So I'm just going with my history. And I feel that,
Should we appoint Bill the clerk?
I don't know,
Yeah.
I don't know. He can wait to that.
That comes with a raise, Bill.
Yeah, but it's not that we, my point is that, yeah, there is some things we need to get to that takes time, like financials, cleaning up things. But this is just a procedural matter that Robert says, so we should align that, so at least we know we in that. If the board thinks we don't need to do it, then that's okay. My role is.
What does our bylaws say? Do we know what our bylaws say? Do we follow Robert's Rules of Order? Is there a state statute that says we have to follow a certain way? Is there legal precedent? Is there something that we want to pay the attorney to look into?
Why don't we agree that I will look into it and report back to you at the next board meeting?
Okay, good.
Maybe some best practices.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry for my idea. Please,
No more questions, Mr. Chair.
You all good?
For now.
All right, with that, I'll,
Okay.
any other questions or concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Sure.
Steve?
No, not yet.
We had started a discussion about moving these meetings to the headquarters.
That we're gonna discuss in governance. which is
Okay,
Coming up.
Okay.
because once again, there's no heat in here tonight.
That's
I mean, it wasn't
correct.
gonna be an issue tonight, but with the weather.
It took me an hour last meeting when I got over to D3.
Right, we're gonna address that in governance.
Okay.
So that, because I think it's gonna be an in-depth discussion, maybe, you know, better for a meeting like that.
Okay. Would it be possible to get, I know a lot of our leases in the accelerators are up within the next 6 to 8 months. Can we get copies of those leases just to look over there and get a schedule of which one is expiring when? So we can do some kind of study as to which ones are worth keeping and which ones we definitely want to get out, or do we want to look for a better qualified location in that area that might be more economically pleasing?
Well, we have a glorified spreadsheet, the one that's the multicolored one.
Yep.
That gives you a lot of the details. Yeah, and I bring them around myself. That gives you a lot of the details, but if Sue, like, say specific leases, then maybe providing every board member with copies of some of those leases.
Yeah, I don't know.
And to be discussed at the accelerator.
No.
Yeah, but something that up in everybody, and I realize we're a little way out for getting that committee up and running. I just feel it'll be helpful to know things like a lot of these we're paying, camp and stuff for tenants, and are we obligated to do that?
Yeah, that's something that we have covered in reviewing those leases as, on a location by location basis, but I can easily share those as well as the matrix that.
Yeah, I just like, we're discussing it and I haven't really had eyes on it, so I'm
Sure.
trying to play a little catch up here with that.
Absolutely. So we had a motion, I'm not sure.
We had a motion that Dean made, we didn't want to have a second to close the meeting.
I second.
No seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Carried unanimously. Well, unanimously minus Dr. Rodock, who had. Yes. With that, thank you, Sue.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.